Are you ready for more lift, some more ground clearance, be able to run a little bit bigger tire, or maybe some more gear reduction? Well, SuperATV's got you covered with our GDP Portals, and today I'm going to be showing you how to get them installed on this Can-Am Defender. So let's jump right in. First thing we're going to do is go ahead and remove our front wheel and tire. We've already done this, so we'll go ahead and we'll remove our cotter pin from our castle nut, then the castle nut. And we'll go ahead and we'll take our 15mm and we'll remove our tie rod end from our knuckle here. We're going to have to remove the cotter pin from the tie rod end bolt. We've already done this, so we're just going to go ahead and remove our nut. So then we'll just remove our bolt and then our tie rod end. Just drop our bolt through it. Just go ahead and put our nut back on just so we know where everything's at. So we don't have to worry about losing any hardware or anything like that. Then we'll go ahead and we'll remove the 2 bolts securing the brake caliper to the knuckle here. Just get that guy right there. We'll grab us a wrench. We'll remove our hardware, then our caliper, and we'll just kind of lay it up here on top of the A-arm. We're going to be disconnecting it and switching sides with it anyways. And we'll go ahead and grab our hub, slide it straight off. We'll set it over here on the lift. And we'll go ahead and we are going to disconnect our shock. Just pick up on our A-arm a little bit and the shock will just drop free. And we're going to go ahead and disconnect our lower ball joint bolt. Just kind of slide the shock out of the way, pick up on our lower A-arm, wiggle it free, pull our knuckle straight out. Just gonna pull it off the axle here. Just let our A-arm drop down. And since we are going to be removing our knuckle, we'll actually just lay our axle over here onto our tie rod just to make it so our axle's not hanging. That way it has some support so it doesn't want to tear that boot. And we'll go ahead and remove our cotter pin out of our upper ball joint bolt here. And then I'm going to show you all a trick on how to get to your upper ball joint nut really easily. So all we did was we took our extension, shoved it through the lower ball joint hole, then took our 19mm socket, stuck it on the extension, took our impact, and buzzed it right off. Next we're going to take 2 hammers. We're going to place one right here on our knuckle, and then we're going to take the other one and smack it. I do recommend, if you don't have somebody to help you, go ahead and start your nut back on the threads of your ball joint here. That way it doesn't fall and hit the floor. Got it started on there. That way when we smack it, it'll drop down, it'll sit right on the nut and not the floor. So we're just going to take it, just like that, pop right loose, flip it back around, and then remove the knuckle, and we'll go ahead and set this guy aside. So moving on to the rear, we're going to go ahead and remove our wheel and tire. And we're going to go ahead and remove our cotter pin from our castle nut, then the castle nut. Just like that. And we're just going to do the same steps. We're going to go ahead and disconnect the brake caliper. Remove your caliper. And we'll go ahead and grab our hub, slide it off. We'll set it aside as well. And we're going to go ahead and start removing our hardware for our A-arm, attaching it to our knuckle. Just kind of get our caliper flipped up here out of the way. Pop our bolts out. We'll come up here to the upper A-arm. Looks like our axle's stuck, so all we're gonna do is grab a rubber mallet and just give it a little tap. Just like that, it comes right off. We'll set our knuckle aside. And then in the rear, it's acceptable to allow your axle to hang down, because as you can see, it doesn't put it in a big bind. It just kind of sits right here on the lower A-arm, so it's not a huge deal. So now we're gonna start removing our brake lines from the frame of the machine. A lot of these are really hard to get to drill. We're just gonna take a pry bar and we're gonna smack the actual T-fitting, and we're just gonna knock it right off the frame, because we're gonna be replacing the T-fitting anyways. We won't be reusing the factory one. So we'll just take our pry bar or anything that you can hit with. See, it just broke our rivet right off there. So that one's disconnected. Then if you look up in here, we're gonna have a couple of rivets as well. Now these get a little bit more tricky to get to these, but it's gonna be the same concept. We're just gonna take our pry bar and knock the rivets out of the frame. So now we're gonna go ahead and disconnect our shock just to make it a little bit easier to get to this rivet right here on the A-arm. So we'll just go ahead and remove our shock bolt. We'll just hold our shock up out of the way. We'll just drill right through the center of this rivet right here. Now we're going to remove the voltage regulator from the bracket just to make it a little bit easier to get in there to knock our rivet off. Lift the voltage regulator out of the way, that way you can knock your rivet off. For this last rivet, you'll have to raise your bed. We've already disconnected our shock. You'll want to do that as well, that way you can get your bed all the way back. And then we're just going to go right down here to this last rivet and drill it out. Next, we're going to remove the battery cover, the center section of the floorboard, and then the front bulkhead cover off the machine. So for our battery cover, we're just going to go right in here and we're going to twist the two quick disconnects. It just pops right out. And then the second one's right over here. We'll just twist it as well. And we'll just grab a hold of it. And slide it right out. We'll just set it right up on top of our seats like that. We'll make sure that we take our quick disconnect hardware here. We'll sit it in the cup holder, that way we don't lose it. And we're going to go through and remove the push pins that secure the center portion. Grab that center section, we'll go ahead and remove it. And then we're going to need to grab a T25 and we're going to remove this screw right here, this screw right here, that one, that one, that one, and that one. Once we have everything removed, we're going to go in here and remove our brake lines from these clips. What you'll do is you'll just grab a hold of this tab right here, pull it down, and pick up. Then there's going to be our brake line right here. So we'll just pull it up and then pull it out of this front one as well. Then our brake line should move fairly free. We'll just go ahead and pop these clips back down for just a little bit. Next, we're going to remove all three of our rivets, securing our T-fittings and brake line to the front of the machine. Then we'll remove the 10mm bolts securing the brake lines to the A-arms. You'll want to repeat all the steps for the passenger side to the driver's side, and then we're going to come over here to the driver's side, and there's going to be the master cylinder cover right here. Just take a push pin removal tool, remove this push pin. cover will probably just fall right out for you. And when you look up in there, you're gonna see your master cylinder. And if you take your hand and you follow the brake lines back, you can only get your hand in there so far, but there's gonna be a couple push pins retaining the brake lines. It'll just have a clamp around it and a push pin going up in the frame. The easiest thing to do is take a long screwdriver, or if you have a push pin removal tool that's extra long, stick it up in there and then just pry them loose, pop them out of the frame, and then we'll start disconnecting our lines from the master cylinder and pulling all of our lines off the machine. You're gonna wanna remove your lower dash. And then we're gonna go underneath of the dash. We're gonna look straight up through here, and we're gonna see these two clips. These are the last two clips that are holding your brake lines onto your machine. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna take our pry bar again. We're gonna slide it up underneath the clip the best that we can. And we're just gonna take our hammer and we're just gonna smack them until they come loose. Next, we're gonna remove the following 4 push pins. This one here, there, and then in the same exact spots on the opposite side. We're just gonna go through, pop these lower ones out first, and then we'll kind of let the hood down, go up here to the top, and get these out as well. We'll lift the hood back up. And that'll let us pull our fender back out of the way enough to where we can get these 2 screws on the dash. So now we're gonna go up here to our master cylinder, and we're gonna undo this plug located right here. And then we're gonna cut the zip tie off of this line right here, securing the plug to it. That way, whenever we start taking our bolts loose that are securing the brake lines to the master cylinder, it doesn't want to twist up on us, it'll just rotate with it. So we'll go ahead and undo this plug. So now we're gonna go ahead and completely disconnect this brake line. Whenever we take them loose, we wanna make sure that we don't lose the copper washers. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take it loose, and then I'm gonna take my bolt, stick it right back through and into the master cylinder, just to kind of slow the leak down until we get our new brake line ready to go. Still gonna leak a little bit. No way to fully get it to quit leaking. And we're gonna come up here to this back line, and we'll just go ahead and disconnect it as well. Now we're gonna go and take our calipers loose from our brake line. Same principle applies, keep your banjo bolt. And try to keep these calipers upright so you don't lose all the fluid out of them. That's just going to help you later on whenever we go to bleed our brakes. So we know this one, the passenger side, we'll let it sit right here for now. We're going to head on over here to the driver's side, do the same thing. And we're just going to come up in here, find our front brake line. Just pull it out. Probably have to pull them out of the clips. Should be able to spread them by hand. Just grab them, pull them apart. It's pretty obvious which one's the front, which one's the rear. Obviously this one's the rear because it's feeding towards the rear of the machine. And this is going to be our front right here. Then you're going to cut the zip tie and then remove the rivet. Like that. And then another rivet that we can't drill, so we're just going to take our pry bar, stick it through there, and knock the head of the rivet off, and then remove the brake line. Once we have all our fasteners removed for our brake lines, we're going to go ahead and pull them out. Just like that. And we'll just take our factory lines and set them aside. Now we're going to come back to the rear and go ahead and disconnect our brake lines from our calipers, just as we did in the front. Then we're going to go ahead and remove our brake lines. The next thing we're going to do is grab all of our brake lines out of our kit. We're going to extend them out and then take measurements. This is the longest one in the kit, so obviously it's going to be the rear. So what we're going to do is we're going to go right up through where the master cylinder is, where we previously removed the cover in our old brake lines. We're going to take the new brake line and we're going to route it over top of the power steering unit. Now this line can be a little bit difficult to work with here just because it's always going to want to go back to its form it was in while it was in the packaging. So I like to just take a little section like this and just start feeding it over the top. And just biggest thing is just to make sure you go over top of the DPS unit here. So next we're going to grab our sensor, which is also our banjo bolt. We're going to take one of our copper washers off and then we're going to leave one up against the head of the banjo bolt here. We're going to slide it through and then take our other copper washer, slide it on the back side. And we're going to go right up here and we're just going to thread it right back on to the master cylinder the same way that we took our old one off. So once we have our rear brake line installed, we're going to grab the 31-inch long brake line. This is going to be the front feed line. We're going to grab our banjo bolt, and again the same way, put your bolt through with your copper washer, then take your other copper washer and install it just like this. All right, so we're going to take our front feed line and we're going to route it right down through the firewall with the throttle cable. We're going to run it straight down, and then once we've ran it all the way down into position, we're going to grab our T-fitting out of our hardware kit. As you can see, our brake lines ran right up to this point. We're going to take our T-fitting, we're going to thread it on to our brake line. We're going to go ahead and fully tighten the brake line onto it, just because it's that much easier to do it outside of the frame rather than when it's all bolted together. Get it as tight as we can like that. And then we're going to grab the hardware provided in the kit to attach the T-fitting to the frame. So we'll just line it up like that, and then we'll take our hardware, stick it through, put our nut on the bottom, or put our bolt on the bottom, then our nut on the top. So next we're going to grab the two 50-inch long brake lines that go to the front of the machine. It'll look just like this, and we'll have the banjo out here for the caliper. So we're going to take it, we're going to take this fitting right here, and we're going to go right up to our T-fitting that we just finished installing to the frame. We're going to start it in there. Make sure that you have it started nice and straight. And go ahead and start kind of tightening this line in there. It's at a little bit of an angle, so it kind of can be a little bit difficult to get it good and started. You want to make sure that you get it started straight. Ours is started straight. So then we're going to do the same exact thing for the opposite side. We're going to take our 50-inch brake line, go right over here, and get it started into the T-fitting. So now we're going to head into the machine and we're going to grab our rear brake line. We're going to route it right down the factory clips that are on the frame here. just like that. And we're gonna lift these up. These holders. I'm just gonna pop the line into the holder all the way down through here, like that. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and snap these in place so my line doesn't want to jump out on me again. And we're gonna take our line and we're gonna feed it. Now if you look, you can see daylight straight back through here. And that's the way we're gonna run it, is right out towards the daylight. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna reach down here and we're gonna grab our brake line from where we've ran it from the front towards the rear. And we're gonna go ahead and grab our T-fitting and we'll go ahead and thread it onto our brake line here. So we're just gonna start it on here, just like this. And then we're just gonna follow the frame and we're gonna figure out exactly where we're gonna run our brake line T-fitting to. So I'm gonna slide it back here. I'm gonna go right underneath the axle, like that. And then I'm gonna raise the machine up and start looking in here and figuring out where we're gonna install the T-fitting to. So now we have our T-fitting and we've attached our supply line. And then this line that has the 90-degree bend in it, this is gonna be our driver's rear brake line. This line right here that has the straight connection, this is gonna be the passenger rear. And we're gonna make sure that our T-fitting is oriented just like this, with the opening for the bolt to go through on this side. And then right down from where the shift linkage attaches, you can see that's where we knocked one of our rivets out. We're gonna take one of the provided bolts in the hardware kit, it'll look just like this right here. And we're gonna stick it through our T-fitting, and then we're just gonna thread it right into that hole. It's the same diameter, so it's gonna be able to thread right in. Then once we have our T-fitting in place and everything tightened down, we're gonna take our lines, we're gonna run them to the appropriate areas, we're gonna run them out towards the A-arms. So the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna grab our backing plate for our passenger side. So it should look just like this, with the bracket here that our steering arm's gonna go on, facing towards the rear of the machine. And we're just gonna go ahead and grab our upper ball joint hardware. It'll be your factory hardware. So we'll slide it on, stick our washer on, and we'll stick our nut as well. And we'll go ahead, take our extension, slide it up through the hole with our socket. And we'll go ahead and we'll tighten our ball joint up. Make sure we get it nice and tight. And while it's wide open here, it's nice and easy to get to. We'll go ahead and we'll reinstall our cotter pin. Once we have our upper ball joint attached, our cotter pin in, I'm gonna go ahead and pick up on our A-arm here. We'll just slide our axle through our backing plate, just like this. We'll just kind of let it hang there. Just take our brake line and kind of put it out of the way for the time being until we're ready to hook our caliper up. Just hook our line out of the way. And we'll grab our lower A-arm. We'll go ahead and get it lined up with our backing plate. If it doesn't go right in, you'll have to take just a rubber mallet, give it a few taps to get it in place. So once we have our lower ball joint into our backing plate, we'll just slide our hardware through, just like that. Once we have that in there, we'll just go ahead and fully tighten it as well. We're gonna grab our steering arm, as well as two M12 by 40 millimeter bolts and two M12 nylock nuts. We're gonna line it up just like this, with the bolt head coming from the inside going out. Go ahead and get our nuts started. What I like to do is I like to take one of my long M12 bolts. It's going to secure the portal to the backing plate, and I like to stick it through this hole before I tighten these bolts up. That way it kind of helps it align to make sure that whenever we tighten these up, it's all going to line up. The next thing we're going to do is go ahead and hook our shock back up. Then we're going to grab our portal, and we know this is our passenger side front because of where our CMP is going to mount up here. So we're just going to take it, slide it onto the axle. Let's grab a hold of the output shaft and kind of spin it a little bit, around a little bit there. And we're going to take our axle nut, we'll go ahead and we'll thread it all the way in. It's just going to kind of help us hold the axle, hold the portal in place. Then we're going to grab our M12 bolts, we're going to start sliding them through. As well as the M12 nuts, we'll just go on the back side here. Slide them on. Go all the way around here. Then on this one right here, we're going to use our bolt that doesn't have a flanged head on it. And then we're going to use a washer as well with it. And we'll slide it through. And we'll take one of our nylock nuts, put it on the back side. Go ahead and get that nice and started there. So now our portal box is kind of somewhat mocked up. We're going to go ahead and remove this bolt right here. Go ahead and remove that bolt. Then we're going to grab our caliper mounting plate. It's going to go right here. So next we're going to grab the CMP that's labeled PGH6 CMP 015B. It's going to be for the passenger side. Then we're going to grab our Allen headed bolt that's provided in the hardware kit, and then another M12 and nylock nut. So what we're going to do is we're just going to put it right here, take our Allen headed bolt, go ahead and get it started in there pretty far. We'll take our M12, run it through the bottom. Then we're going to go through and we're going to fully tighten all of our hardware. Once we have everything fully tightened, we're going to go ahead and take our recessed nut back off. We're going to go ahead and take a little bit of Loctite and apply it to the threads of the inside of the recessed nut here. We'll go ahead and reinstall it. And you'll just want to make sure that you tighten that to your axle's specification, depending upon what axle you're utilizing today. Then we're going to take our recessed nut cap, as well as our 3 short Allen headed screws. We're gonna pop them through like that. Take our Allen socket here. And then once we get all of them started, we'll go ahead and fully tighten our recessed nut cap. Then we're gonna be heading over to the press to start pressing in some studs. So we're gonna grab our M10 by 1.25 studs out of the stud kit and our hub rotor assembly. And as you can see here, there's a little triangle cutout, and there'll be 2 holes right next to each other, and there'll be a third that's kind of off by itself. You want to follow the pattern all the way around, and on that third one that's off by itself, that's where we're going to put our studs, because we are working on a Can-Am today. So we're going to get our studs lined up in the hole. We're going to take a socket or something that we can press with, something that's going to press it in nice and easy, and then we're just going to go ahead and start pressing. So we got one in. Then we're going to repeat these same steps for the rest of these 4 and then the rest of the 3 hub rotor assemblies. So before we put our hub rotor assembly on, we're going to want to make sure that this bolt right here, as well as this bolt right here, are torqued to the proper torque settings. Once we've done that, we're going to go ahead and slide our hub rotor assembly on to the output shaft of the portal, just like that. While we already have it on there, we'll go ahead and take our castle nut. We'll just thread it all the way on there. We don't necessarily need to fully tighten it just yet. And we're going to grab our driver's side brake caliper. Remember I said earlier that we would have to be switching our calipers? We don't have our brake line hooked up yet. I find it just makes it a little bit easier whenever you go to route your brake lines. Then we'll just use our factory hardware here to secure our caliper to the CMP. So we're going to go ahead and take our bolt out of our caliper that we stuck in there just to kind of keep some of the brake fluid from running out. We've got our brake line down here, so we're just going to take our banjo bolt, stick it through the brake line, and then make sure that we stick our copper washer on the back side too. And then we're just going to run our brake line to the point to where we can get it installed to the caliper just like this. Okay, so once we have that taken care of, we are going to grab our brake line clips that are provided in the hardware kit, as well as the hardware for the brake line clip. It'll be the really small Allen headed hardware in the kit here. Then we're going to come over here to the steering arm, and there's going to be a tapped hole right here, and there's going to be a tapped hole right here on the backing plate. So what we're going to do is we're going to slide this over top of our line. Once we have it slid on the line, right here, get our hardware started, and then do the exact same for right here. And then on the bottom side, we're just going to use our factory hardware as well as factory clip off the factory brake line to secure it. Next thing we're going to do is go ahead and hook up our tie rod here, fully tighten our brake caliper bolts as well as our banjo bolt. We're going to want to tighten this to at least 300 foot-pounds, and then make sure that we line up the cotter key hole, install our cotter key, go through, make sure the brake lines are nice and tidied up. Then we're going to head to the rear and get our portals installed back there. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to grab our rear backing plate, and we're going to go ahead and put some bushings in. So you can either use your factory bushings, or we decided to go ahead and upgrade today, since we're going to be we would have to take them out, and this is the best time to upgrade. So we went ahead and used SuperATV's heavy duty UHMW bushings. Just gonna go ahead and pop all of the sleeves in as well as the bushings themselves. It's pretty easy. Stick them in there, press them all the way in, then take your sleeve and slide it through. A lot of times you can do it by hand. Like this one, we just did it all by hand without really any resistance. So then we are going to line this up right here with our upper A arm. And we're going to grab our hardware. We're going to grab our factory hardware. And we're going to go ahead and line our axle up into our backing plate just like that. And again, we'll just kind of move our brake line out of the way for just a minute here until we get ready to hook it up. And we're going to line our lower A-arm up with the backing plate. And once we have it lined up, we'll go ahead and reinstall our factory hardware. Get our nuts installed, just like that. And we can go ahead and get our shock reinstalled as well while we're at it. So next we're going to grab our portal. Go ahead and slide it on the axle just like we did in the front. We'll take our axle nut. We'll go ahead and we'll get it started. And we'll grab our M12 long bolts. Stick them through. Go all the way around and continue doing that. As soon as we stick one through, we'll stick a nylock nut on it. So next thing we're going to do is go ahead and remove our bolt that was right here next to our 30 or 45, depending on what percent gear reduction you have. And we're going to take our CMP and go ahead and get it started and into place. And then we'll take one of our low-headed Allen screws. Go ahead and get it attached. Then we'll put this bolt right here through. Make sure that we have nuts on everything that needs to have a nut on it. Then we're gonna go ahead and make sure that we've already applied our blue Loctite to our axle nut. We've already done this, so we're gonna go ahead and install our recessed nut cap after we've torqued it to the axle manufacturer's torque spec. So now we're gonna grab our hub rotor assembly, go ahead and get it all the way on. Then we're gonna grab our caliper that we took from the driver's side. Go ahead and slide it into position. We'll take our caliper bolts, our factory ones. Go ahead and get those lined up and started. We're going to take our castle nut. Go ahead and get that ran up. Then we're going to go ahead and remove our bolt out of our caliper here. And we'll grab our brake line and we'll just get it reattached just like we did on the front, except back here on the rear, we're only going to have 2 points where we can attach our brake line. One's going to be right here, and then the other one's going to be right here. Once we have it attached, we'll just go through and make sure all our hardware is fully tightened. And we're going to repeat all of these steps for the opposite side. So now that we have our portals installed to all 4 corners, everything's tightened up, everything's ready to go, except we still need to bleed our brakes. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up to our master cylinder. On our brake fluid reservoir, we're going to have 2 reservoirs on the Defender. We have both of them filled up. We're going to have somebody hop into the driver's seat of the machine, pump the brakes up quite a few times because we did disconnect all the brake lines. So you're going to want to continually pump them. You're going to want to start getting that fluid moving through the lines, and then we're going to start farthest away from the master cylinder. So that's going to be the passenger or right rear. That'd be right here. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and just take the cap off of our bleeder. So there it is, that's the bleeder right there. Once we know that we're getting some fluid back to the rear, we're going to go ahead and crack this bleeder after we pump them about 5 times after the fluid's already been pushed back to the rear. And we're going to continually do that until we get all the air out of this caliper. We'll jump over here to the driver's side, and then we'll jump back to the passenger side front, and then finish off with the driver's side front. And you just want to make sure you get all the air out of the lines. On, side by sides, it can take some time. I highly recommend that you get an air bleeder to do this. It just takes, about half as long. It's super effective. It's the way that I'm going to do it. So then you'll just go through, reinstall all your components, and that's how easy it is to install SuperATV 6-inch GDP portals on this Can-Am Defender. For more information on these GDP portals or any of SuperATV's great products, feel free to give us a call at 855-743-3427 or check us out online at superatv.com. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.